So welcome to a special and potentially a first conversation for GrowFree on ceremony and cosmology with Lorna Bailey and Josephine Scott. There are lots of reasons to have this conversation right now, no least that Lorna and Josephine are coming to Aberdeenshire and to our GrowFree community site in June for the solstice to hold a ceremonial lodge with our community members and interested people here in Aberdeenshire. But all of this sits in a kind of a vast context that I couldn't hope to do justice to in even a conversation like this, but in a short introduction. We're finding ourselves in a period of fast transition, fast evolution. I'm sure, and I found myself having a wee nap this morning as evidence of that, needing to let my body catch up with some of it. But we're in the last kind of 100-odd years of the era of Pisces, which was an era of religion and faith and sacrifice, and we're transitioning, moving towards an era of Aquarius that's been coming in, which is characterized by kind of thought and contemplation and innovation and technology. And this final stage, which is kind of 600-700 years long, is characterized by a kind of a push and pull of those two energies of the kind of religion and the innovation in science. And I'm sure most of us are witnessing or experiencing that in our lives, and moving into a time of really fast-paced change and technology, and a future that looks really futuristic for a lot of people, I'm sure. And whether we are kind of champions of the technology or not, it's a big part of the evolution and what's going on our planet. And amid that kind of transition, there's lots of other planets doing their thing, and lots of signs that are equally kind of pulling us back into our bodies and back into our planet, into our physicality. There's a lot about that Piscean era that kind of flipped us out of our bodies, whether it was trauma or whether it was kind of moral judgment. We were not these full-bodied, ecstatic, sexual, psychic beings, indigenous beings. We got religious, and we got very thinky, and equally, I guess, moving into that technology, there's the potential for that to become very disembodied, or equally for it to sort of complement and support a transition back into our bodies. So in this picture, why would we look to Indigenous ceremony? Why would we have a conversation about that today? Mainly, I'm going to leave that up to Lorna and Josephine to give us their perspective. But I guess from my point of view, when things are moving so fast, I like and need to have something to reorient and to reground me, and that kind of reaching back into the ancient times and into the ancestors, and allowing that flow of information to come back through us is a big part of what we're doing at GrowFree. Releasing all the trauma that's been held in our bodies as we've had to flip out of them, or we've been subject to control or oppression or ridicule, and as we come back into these bodies, we learn how to release all those experiences of a massive era of thousands of years. We have the possibility for that intelligence and that information to come back through and inform us as we go forward. And to me, that feels grounding and exciting. So, Indigenous ceremony then, within this big context, I hope that makes kind of some sense or gives some background to this conversation. I'm just going to start with, what does ceremony mean for you? Lorna and Josephine, what does ceremony mean for you, and how did you come to know ceremony? How did you come to practice it? Lorna, do you want to start us off?
Okay, I can go first. I think for me, ceremony really rooted into my body when I met my elder teacher when I was in my mid-20s. And I'd gone to a medicine sweat lodge weekend, but it was the observing him offering a pipe ceremony to the people, which felt so real and so magical, but it touched something really deep inside that just felt incredibly ancient to me. And there was a deep knowing that I knew this prayer, I knew this ceremony, and that I just had fallen into something that was really ancient inside of myself. And I was changed by the end of that weekend of being immersed in ceremony for 2.5 days. And I realized then that although I'd been a very spiritual person up until that point, that bringing ceremony into my daily life was going to be a huge awakener going forward. And that was really what guided me to go out to New Mexico to begin deeper training, and what it was to live as an Indigenous person connected to the earth, and how ceremony informs so much of Indigenous cultures around the world, wherever we've come from, wherever we've stood. And so our daily lives for Josephine and I were rooted in ceremony and continue to be so. And they are the anchor points that, for me, keep me connected when everything else is going a bit crazy around me and feeling a little bit disjointed. We can all feel very connected to nature, but when you go out and you do ceremony alongside nature and with nature and invite nature in, you end up having a very direct experience. And that becomes a reminder point of why we do it as humans, because we're the only species on the earth that feel like they need ceremony. It's a human thing that we do this. And for me, it's about being connected to the sacred and making the sacred part of my everyday life. So that's where it sits in my heart and in my body.
As always, it's opened up questions and threads for me, but I'm going to go straight over to Jo.
Think about springtime and bird song. And when the birds begin to sing, it's actually their song that begins to wake up the trees. And, people ask me, well, how do I start bringing ceremony into my life? I think the simplest thing is to go out, sing the sun up, become a part of that natural cycle. Sing the sun up, allow the sun to shine upon you, those first rays that are just so beautifully healing, that essence that gives life, that makes everything alive on this planet. For me also, you know, our teacher, you know, was traveling 30 years ago in Australia, and it was really cold. I was searching so hard, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a teacher in Australia. Nobody wanted to teach this skinny white girl. And so when I met our teacher, and went into my first weekend experience of ceremony, and went into my first ceremonial lodge, medicine lodge, I was going back into the womb. When you go and sit into that lodge and you sit in the darkness and you see those glowing stones come in and the door goes down, it's recreating that womb. We say you're sitting in the darkness of the Great Mother's womb. And that was what was life-changing for me. That was the ceremony that woke me up. And I think I dedicated myself to the Earth Mother right there and then, you know. But to remember that we all, at one point, came from an Indigenous people. We carry those memories. We have that innate wisdom within us. And so what ritual does on a daily basis is we align ourselves with our innate wisdom, and we are reaching out and acknowledging the creation around us and saying, I'm here and I'm grateful for you. And I want to know you, and I want to hear you, and I want to speak with you, and I want to be shown a good way to walk in this life that is in balance and in harmony. So help me to be connected. So ritual and ceremony, you know, help us to be connected. And when we start our day with whatever ritual we choose for ourselves, because we're so imaginative and we're so creative, you know, whatever works is what I'm about. You know, whatever works for you, do it, because then it helps you to focus and move forward into the day in a good way.
Right, that's beautiful. I loved that phrase, "Sing the sun up," and it was making me think of just how there's been talk recently of all these solar flares and how much they're affecting us, but equally talk of how we're affecting the solar flares, and that sense of being able to sing the sun up, not necessarily meaning me on my own is making it rise, but to be part of it, to accompany it, to share in it, to influence it, was amazing. So I'm slightly kicking myself for not having looked up the etymology of the word ceremony. But what I'm taking from what you guys are saying is that it's a conscious act of attention and connection and intention. And however we do it, we can be creative and have choice in that. And there are some recognized ways that have been passed down lineages as well. So in this setting then of well, if I come back even to the point I think you said, Jo, that we all we have all come from Indigenous people.
If you go back far enough, yes.
Yeah. Well, I remember sitting with someone who is, I really respect his work. I was having a conversation with Thomas Hubel, who does a lot of, big collective trauma healing, and just saying to him, it feels still, I've cleared a lot of trauma, and yet for me, in my family lineage, it feels so far back that the Indigenous experience was. I still don't feel like I'm tapping in, but even a year later, I feel like that's bridged, that's or is bridging, and so that sense of releasing a lot of experience and held emotion that was preventing me. It was frozen. So there was a frozenness in terms of the Indigenous wisdom coming through my body, clearing. So in this context where there's a lot of collective healing going on, and there's a lot of shift and transition, there's fast-paced evolution. What do you feel the role of ceremony is and will be as we continue to evolve? So you've spoken about ceremony in general. What about now at this precise point that we're at? What do you feel? What kind of part do you see it playing? Would you like to see it playing?
It's about waking up that genetic memory, helping ourselves to access that knowledge that does lay within us. But we need help to do that, because we're those people who have forgotten. So we're really beginning, it's like we've cycled all around, we are beginning again in the beginning. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit sick and a little bit I've lost my thread. I'm going to hand over to Lorna and I'll circle back around and begin again.
So there you go, and that's part of ceremony, isn't it? That we have that support.
I think going forward, that ceremony in everyday life brings the sacred into everyday life. And I think that is a soothing salve that humanity needs right now. Because I look at everything that's going on that is so fractured and disconnected. And ceremony brings you back into relationship with the earth, and with creation, with spirit, and with yourself, and with all of humanity. And I think at these times that we're in, particularly where we're moving through technological advances, and that there's a lot of emphasis on moving more into the mind, so everything is speeding up. What ceremony allows you to do is to slow down. Everything becomes much, much slower. And there's a difference between ceremony and ritual. Cleaning your teeth every day is a ritual. But if you do it in a sacred way, it becomes a ceremony. So I realized a few years ago, what are the things in my everyday life that I really don't particularly want to be doing, and how can I make it into a sacred act? And then it becomes a ceremony. And one of those things for me became bookkeeping, like putting the accounts in to the accountant. It was that realization that this end of year tax thing just was a bit of a grind. But now I set a day, I put an alignment in around it. I light candles, I put music on, and I make it a ceremony to actually do it. And it has become a completely different experience. So we can bring ceremony into the everyday things of the world as well as those things of the earth. And I think there's been so much emphasis, and it's so good, in recent years that journaling has become very, a conscious thing for people to do. And then gratitude practices, we hear about that all the time now, about being in gratitude. And that lights me up, because that's an acknowledgement of what you're grateful for, and that then leads into becomes a ceremony, for people who are waking up in the morning and they're putting out to the world and to the universe what it is that they're grateful for. That's the start, because for some people that might be their first introduction to being able to do ceremony. And ceremonies have always historically been held by the shamans of the tribe or the medicine people. They would hold those ceremonies. And so I think we're moving into a time where we can bring those ceremonies in for ourselves. But part of what Joe and I are bringing is that, we can come and offer ceremonies to people and lead others in those ceremonial ways, because we are able to hold a container for those events, those things to then move through the body. So I think it's a personal, and it becomes a collective thing as well. And I think it's going to be a much more beautiful world when ceremony becomes much more in the center, held in the heart and in the love. Because to do good ceremony, you have to be in a place of good love and good heart.
And as we begin to think of ourselves as Indigenous again, that we can have access to, that we can hold this container for ourselves, that we can do it ourselves, that we can communicate, without an intermediary. And it gives that power back to the people.
I think that's a point that I really wrote down there when Lorna said she sees ceremony becoming or coming back into the center of our communities and our everyday lives. But beside that, I wrote the word decentralized. So rather than it being the few people within the community that knew how to hold ceremony, we're coming back to a time when we're coming. It's maybe massive quantum leaps back in time to a time when it was so decentralized, but coming forward into a time when we can't, we won't need to feel scared or arrogant to suggest or to organize ceremony. We'll trust and know that it's coming from our heart, and that we can bring people together and understand the essence of what it's about, and feel it, and feel ourselves connecting with the subtle, or the deeper, or the elemental. So those were some of the points I wrote down, was back into the center of life. So what role do you see ceremony having? And please, if anyone has any questions that's listening in, type them into the chat. I'd love to be feeding them in. So we see it becoming more back in the center of everyday life, and yet decentralized and democratic, in the hands of all the people. It's something that supports us to slow down at a time that is becoming increasingly rapid and fast. And almost there, I'm thinking, because you're connecting into the field of the observer, it's the opportunity to just like watch the speed, watch the unfolding. And it's a connecting into the sacred. So my next question is around the lineages then, you know, if these ceremonies have roots in Indigenous lives, for you guys, you know, Josephine, I'm understanding there that you grew up in Australia. I may have got that wrong. Lorna, you grew up in the UK. Your teacher was in New Mexico, and you spent time apprenticing and living over there. From your knowledge and memory and experience, where are the lineages and threads that feed into the ceremony and the practices that you lead and that you share and that you perform each day? I'm interested in terms of, like, you know, we had a question before the event even that someone wanted to know, oh, will they be speaking about ceremony that comes from Northern Europe and this part of the world?
Well, I don't have a
Well,
lot
I
of
think
it. Go ahead, honey.
carrying at the same time. Yes, in answer to your the question that came in there, Emma, my going to New Mexico was to understand about my own genetic ancestry that lay within me. And the Native American, if you want to just frame it just in that way, because our teacher, you know, he taught a way that was through vision that was given to us as a people, as a white people, as a white race. It wasn't rooted in his particular tribe that he came from, and he also acknowledged his own Northern European ancestry that he had within him, the blue-eyed Indian, as he was called and known by. And what happened to me during my training was that I started to uncover those own genetic codings within myself. And so when I came back to the UK and I started making drums and doing shamanic drum working and things like that, we weren't importing skins from America. We were using what came from this land here on Bear Island, as it was known and is still known as. And we were using hoops that came from ash trees from here, because we recognized that that's what we would have used in our ancient past for those things. And it went deeper for me in that I began to remember that old language that came up out of ancient Europe, that old Hyperborean language. So when I'm deeply immersed in ceremony, or I can shift myself into that place, that ancestral voice comes through, and it's what I sing in. And that's part of that offering that I bring to people when I'm doing ceremony with them, to help wake that up in themselves. Because I believe that we have access, like Joe said, to all of these things within us. So the time in New Mexico was the catalyst. So it was the container for that to be able to be brought forward. And part of the living vision that he was walking was that, you know, we would eventually all walk on the lands that we originally came from. And that's been something that's kind of come to pass and continues to come to pass. So have you got anything to add to that, Joe?
John was he was given a vision by the Great Mother. You say this, you know, the feminine principle appeared to him in Vision Quest, you know, and she came in the form of an old woman, ancient woman. And she gave him basically a generic way to teach the ceremony that we are bringing to you. So that, you know, we wouldn't be appropriating any one tribe's way of doing things. People have been sweating for a long time all over the earth. And it was something that we could call our own and grow within. And so, you know, there's a deep training within that. You know, that we have, you know, for me, I've been practicing now for 30 years. And it he was told that he would travel to all these different countries, all these different altars, and that he had to be not prejudiced, that he had to be prepared to teach people of all color that we're all human beings, and that we needed to get rid of these delineations. And I'm very grateful because I stepped into something that woke me up like nothing else had woken me up before. You know, I had found my way. I had found a way that felt so good and so right and made me feel so alive inside. There was just no doubt in my mind that this was the direction that I was going to be moving in. And I haven't looked back. You know, it's held me strong in my life, in my weakest moments. And I think, you know, ceremony is also about that, holding us through our weakest moments. When we don't know, when we don't know, and we have to have a way to center ourselves so we can move into our deepest trust. I think that's one of the hardest things for human beings, you know, is what is it to truly walk in trust?
I'm just going to let that sink and land a little bit with everyone, including myself, before I respond with my experience. I guess that's part of what ceremony can do, isn't it? It allows our experience to land within us, and it allows, it creates a container to support us to hold whatever that is, and sometimes release it, sometimes reframe it. I'm kind of moved to just comment a little on, you know, the creation of GrowFree and the GrowFree community. I would never have recognized years back as it was forming that I was receiving visions, but essentially, you know, that's what it was. And what I've received is it's similar. And it draws on different training and conversations, but it comes through as a kind of a direct experience of the way the cosmos works, the way our nature is, the way things are, and what that experience of the feminine womb or a void, and the experience of the masculine energy moving and the coming together of that. And I think what I'm hearing you guys speak about and what it's bringing up for me is that when you said people have been sweating for, can't remember what word you used, generations doesn't seem long enough, but eras, and it's reaching us back into a very, like, it's taking us back beyond even like the human memory into the mammal memory of being in a womb, of being born, and taking us back into the geological and the cosmological memory prior to that. And I think that's been something for me that's been so exciting and affirming in these more recent years, is a direct experience and a direct memory of this, of that vast bank of experience that leapfrogs way back before human verbal, recognizable experience and memory, and goes into something that's in a different realm. And it is
sorry, Amelia, just to sort of put it into context. I mean, the medicine lodges that Jo and I have held and conducted and supported and taught people in is rooted in a cosmology for us. And I don't know how it sits with other tribal peoples. We know that the lodge is seen as the womb. But for us, the medicine lodge ceremony is that primal reenactment of creation.
Mhm.
It's more than just a purification. It's more than just a rebirthing of yourself. It's a primal reenactment of creation. And so everything that we do as part of that lodge ceremony is explained and seen in the context of that. So when we build the lodge itself, that represents the womb, and we build the fire pit to represent and hold the stones, but we speak about the cosmology of that, in the beginning, or a beginning, should we say, if you want to go back 4 billion years of how long, this earth has been in this, as we know it to be, from the oldest geology that is here, is that through the void, there's light, there's fire, that as it came through, that masculine principle, it threw out its star seeds, its sun seeds, into the infinite darkness of the Great Mother's womb. And we say that one of those sun seeds, those massive bits of rock, that was glowing and moving through the darkness, was searching out that which it was not, because it had come in from another reality into this reality that was held by the sleeping nature of the Great Mother herself, but that she had called and she had been waiting. And then at this moment, she felt the presence of the other. She felt this something other that was different to herself, moving, traveling. And he was drawn to something that was not he, but was something other, because she was from a different place. And so when we build our altar that is made out of the mud and the earth of the center of the womb of the Great Mother, we put it just in front of the door. And when those stones that are heated, that represent the masculine sun seeds and are carried by that stone carrier, we pause them right at that altar. Why? Because for the masculine to enter into the feminine, she needs to meet him first. At that altar, she needs to go out and greet him. And we say that altar is where the masculine and the feminine met for the first time. And then she drew him into herself in a consensual way, which is why the stone carrier places that pitchfork with that stone, and he waits for the lodge pourer to say, "Oh, grandfather, come into this womb." And so when that stone goes into the womb, that sun seed is there glowing. And in the darkness, as the door goes down, water is poured on that stone that creates that steam, that creates that breath of life, that creates that sweating, that creates that amniotic pool of wetness. And we say the grandmother stone and the grandfather, they meet because she's the earth, she's the stone, she's taken him back into herself. And we say that through that water that is poured, the life is given, new life is given. And we say that as part of the cosmology that we walk is that the Great Mother, she took life and she looked at it and she turned it and she churned it and she swirled it and she made it into life. But that she cried tears. She wept tears of joy. She also wept tears of sadness of what this life would become. And so when you're in that lodge and you're praying in those rounds, that first round of giving thanks, that second round of asking for help for others, in that blessing round of spirit, that third round with that tobacco, and in that fourth round where you get to ask for those things for yourself, we understand that people will sweat tears through their body and they will cry water from their eyes. Because that's how it was in the beginning. And we believe that. For us, the lodge ceremony explains how this earth came into being in this universe, but it also explains how we came into being. When that masculine enters into the yoni of the woman and he ejaculates, and those star seeds go out into her infinite womb and life is created. There's no separation. And that's how we approach this ceremony. It's a primal reenactment of creation. And it doesn't belong, it cannot belong to any one particular race of people. It belongs to all of us. And that is, you know, Josephine has poured lodges for 30 years. She's poured women's lodges, men's lodges, mixed lodges. She's done lodges with children. That's why she's so perfectly placed the time of this new cycle to come back to that this altar here and to bring a ceremony that came here for us sort of 26 years ago. The cosmology roots us.
You know, when you crawl on your hands and knees out of that sacred womb, you know, you do get to rebirth yourself, you know, back into this time space. And you have the opportunity to look on the world with new perspective, new eyes. It's just a beautiful way. It's a beautiful way to heal. And, you know, when you're in there and you're crying, you know, you might be crying your heart out. You might not need to cry. You know, it's a different experience for everybody else. But what you're letting go of, the stones will take that which you're letting go of. No, you're emptying out that which does not serve you any longer, because you are letting go of that which keeps you out of that balanced place. And so it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to take responsibility, you know, for yourself. You know, this is what I'm letting go of, and this is an opportunity now for me to embrace peace. This is an opportunity now for me to step out, to crawl out onto the earth with new connectedness. And not only that, I get to share it with these other human beings, you know, that are in there sitting in the darkness with you, that you're not alone in your aloneness. And none of us are alone on this path. Even when we feel so lonely, you know, we know that we're not alone in our aloneness. And so we create support. And so for us coming to GrowFree, you know, we're coming there not because we need to come, although I want to come. I don't need to come, but I want to come. You know, I get to come and share something that is a life-changing experience if you choose it to, you know, and I get to share knowledge. I get to share myself, my heart, and I think that's worth something, you know. I get to come because I've been invited, not because I sought this out. And I get to come and do what I love the best on the land of my own ancestors. You know, this is where my ancestors came from, Scotland. You know, I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know what that is going to wake up inside of me. So, you know, yes, I'm coming to facilitate, I'm coming to hold this container. But I also know through the act of doing this that I'm also waking up things within myself, that this is a part of my own healing, that is not about the ego. It's a blessing and it's exciting. And I'm so grateful.
I think you can probably see, you know, when you speak, both of you, it connects with a deep place in me, and I know you both have a strong connection to the land here, and that seems to be, you know, people that get drawn into some of the stuff we're doing. There's a connection. Someone else, like from France, she's really hoping to come and be there with you guys and also hold ceremony, but she's deeply affected by coming to this part of the world, and there is such a deep, old, ancient geology here. So just then to kind of finish before we have any questions, can you just describe a little of, you know, we're making this a family-friendly gathering and ceremony. How that will look? How, you know, if someone, you know, there might be people who are they've heard about ceremony or they've done lots of ceremony before, but some they might come on their own, but some might be kind of wondering, well, how can this work if I'm bringing children? Can we just describe a little about the approach?
Okay. We're going to be building a lodge from scratch, and there are many tasks involved. And my personal opinion is that, you know, if we're doing it, the children are welcome to be so involved. You know, we have to go and collect the willows or the whatever saplings we're going to be using on your altar. You know, there's a way to do that. And when we involve them and we educate them at this young age, you know, it's instilling in them that they can do this. We are learning how to build the structure. We cover it. You know, they can help throw those blankets on. You know, they can be involved. They're included. And when we're inclusive, you know, then to me, that's what we need in society. That's what's missing. You know, we need to be inclusive. That, oh no, you know, go over there and play. You know, this is for the adults. Sometimes that's appropriate. But in this situation, you know, we want them to be included and feel like they're a part of things, and to be able to bring them into lodge for a very gentle round so that they know what we're doing. And there's curiosity, you know, can be satiated, and they get an opportunity to express themselves. And honestly, when children speak their truth, sometimes that's healing of all, you know, for us adults that get to be the privileged ones to bear witness to that for them. And it's also important for them to hear us pray, what are the things that we pray about that are important to us? And so, you know, born into it. They're growing up within unity that is nurturing them as we nurture ourselves. And I think that it's a good way to look to the future. How are we moving forward? How are we growing? And how do we set that example of what it is to truly walk in beauty to the best of our abilities? You know, understanding, yes, we're going to stumble and fall. We have to, you know, pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off. And hopefully we have a sister or brother, a companion to help us do that. But how we do that is what they witness on a daily basis. So as we take responsibility for ourselves and how we live and walk each day, and for what we speak and how we act and how we react, you know, we're their teachers. And so this is a big teaching for the community, for everybody. And I think it's a good one. And we have fun.
Yeah,
We sing songs.
that's yeah. And it's playful. Yeah, I listened to a lovely thing yesterday, I think, where someone was describing how how mammals developed and evolved to um, not always feel the need to be surviving all the time through rehearsing that survival instinct in play, and that bringing about lighter energies and emotions and that playfulness. While play can be grueling, it brings in that humor and that laughter or any noises and vocalizations and movements, and we create stories through that, and we create experience, and we literally sing the sun up, like you said. Maybe we'll even sing the sun down. There's only a few hours. Well, it may not even it probably won't get properly dark here on that solstice night.
I mean, I think as well, Emma, you know, the way Joe and I approach these things is, for us, the ceremony begins when I pick her up from the airport. You know, we're in ceremony from that for the 7 weeks that she's here. We're gonna be in the container of that wherever we go. We are going out to Germany at the beginning of July to be part of Lodge with good brother out there that I've not seen for a very, very long time. But certainly when we come up to GrowFree, the rough outline of what we're looking at is that on the Friday we'll be building the lodge. And then the Friday evening, I'll be hosting a drumming circle, an ancient voice gathering for those that want to be there on the weekend. And then we'll be starting early on the Saturday because, as you know, with the Cygnus moon circle that I run that is there, we'll be going in just for a couple of hours and then coming out of the lodge. And then the rocks will be heated up for the rest of the ceremony for those that want to come in and actually go into the lodge with Josephine. For she'll be pouring and I'll be working on the outside of the lodge and holding fire with the guys. So there'll be opportunity for the building the day before and for the children to be involved. And yeah, I agree with Joe, you know, that the children are the center. You know, these are the visions and dreamers of this new cycle. You know, they have to learn from us if it's been woken up in us, if so long as they're kept safe and it's in a good way. And so couples that are coming that might have children, they might have to decide, well, okay, you need to maybe look after child so I can maybe go into the lodge for myself, and how that kind of works is all very organic. you know, at the time. We do say once the ceremony actually begins, especially when the fire's lit, that, you know, for children, they can make prayer ties, you know, to go into the ceremony, you know, with the parent. I mean, it's keeping the mindfulness bound, keeping safety, you know, at the core of whatever it is that we're doing, because obviously there's fire involved, and, you know, building these structures involve working with tools and things like that. So we have to be very mindful about that. But the first lodge that I poured in Scotland was over in Ayrshire, around 15 years ago now, and almost 20 years ago. And I took both my daughters there, and my oldest must have been around about 10 at the time. And she came in for a round of lodge at her insistence that she got to sort of be on the inside. And so after we had done our 4 rounds, we opened the door up and she came in, and she absolutely loved it. You know, the heat was, you know, the heat was already there, but she got to experience what it was that we were all just so invested in that weekend. And, you know, I home educated my daughters, as you know, and my eldest is now 27 years old. And this weekend I'm going up to Suffolk to do ceremony with her. She's invited me, Mum, will you come along and do this workshop with me? And I know that because she was raised in an ancient way, with ceremony at the core of her life, that she brings that into her everyday life now. And so I know that this works, you know, because they're now adults. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. And it will be coinciding with, for those that may not know in GrowFree, that it will be 26 years, almost to the month, well, certainly to the week and the month, of when John came to Aberdeenshire in 1998. And I came up and did a recce, because part of his visioning that he was shown of coming to this island was that he was to go to Scotland, where his ancestors came from and where his blue eyes came from, to his great-great-grandmother. And so we did ceremony in Aberdeenshire, and we've circled back around, and it feels very potent, very sacred in that, you know. I know that he'll be, you know, he's been long gone now, but he walks with us every day, and I know that he'll be there watching and overseeing and nodding in that old wise way that he used to, that, you know, we've carried on the, you know, walking the vision, and that you people up there with the community that you're growing, you know, you're going to grow it in a free way, in a good way, and you're doing that. So
it's exciting. I'm delighted to be having you guys come, and the whole weekend will be beautiful, and some of our members will be doing other singing alongside, and there'll be the opportunity for those that want to camp. But it is, I mean, there will be limited places, so if people are interested, do get in touch sooner rather than later. Anyone who's watching, you can put a virtual hand up if you can find that in beside your more, down the bottom of the screen. There's a more with three buttons beside it. You're welcome to pop cameras on if they'll come on just now. And if there's any questions, I've got one in here in the chat, but please do. So if you're happy to be seen, you can pop your video on. Does anyone have a question they want to ask? So I'll read the one from Jean here. How can we best frame our prayers to take to ceremony to strengthen our search for truth? So if someone is looking to prepare in advance, I guess, how could someone approach framing their prayers to take into ceremony to strengthen?
When we are in this ceremony, we pray to spirit. And so to make clear what that means for me, for you, is spirit is not a he or a she, an entity. Spirit is, some people call that universal force or whatever that thing is that is bigger than them. But spirit, for me, is made up of 4 elements: the masculine, the feminine, all of creation around us, and the great mystery. That place where the unknown and the unknowable exists. Spirit is made up by these 4 elements, and that is what we pray to. And so I think that's an important distinction to make. And so when you're coming into Lodge, if you to bear that in mind, that this is not a place to call in your spirit guides, your angels, your whoever you're affiliated with. This is an opportunity for you to be praying directly to Source. And all those other things can wait outside the lodge. You're moving into that sacred womb, that ancient womb, and we're going to be praying to spirit. And so how we do that, grandfather, grandmother, creation, grandfather for the up, grandmother for the down, for the earth. All of creation is this movement, but it's really like making a whole circle around you. And then great mystery, clockwise circle, encompasses all of that. Spirit, come now. Hear me. I am. Say your name. So spirit knows who's speaking. And then say what is in your heart. That first round, like Lorna said, is to say, this is what I'm thankful for. And, we each get an opportunity to speak in that round, what it is we're thankful for. Does that help?
Very clear. Very clear for me, and a big thumbs up from Jean there.
Anything you want to add, Lorna?
Yeah, you must be on mute.
I think you've covered it, Jo.
Okay.
I mean, it's not complicated. It's a very simple ceremony. And I think for those that want to come along, who maybe don't want to go into the lodge for themselves for whatever reason, whether that's health issues or time issues, or maybe they can be here for the building of the lodge, but they won't be able to come for the ceremony itself. They can make prayer ties using colored cloth, which is in alignment with each of the directions, the directional colors. In the medicine, if you want to call it a medicine wheel, but the directions that Jo and I walk with as part of our own cosmology is that yellow represents the sun coming up. It's the grandfather, it's east. Black is summertime, it's the grandmother, it's the south. The west is red, autumn time, spirituality, and the north is the white race, direction of north. Technology is the gift that has been brought to this planet right now. And so those colored cloths, along with blue for the up and green for the below, you can take the pinches of those sacred herbs and you can pray with them, put them into the cloth, bind them, put them onto string, and give them to someone, and they could be taken into the lodge. So your prayers, even if you're not in there, can still be felt and heard by spirit, and you'll still be supported in that way. And then afterwards, when you come out, the ceremony continues, because we then gather and nourish our bodies with the feast, which hopefully the children have helped prepare and put together with those people. And the way we were trained, the role of the person who's cutting up the bread is no less important than the person who's pouring the lodge. There's no hierarchical thing here. we're leading it, but that's to hold a container to keep you safe. We recognize that we're no greater or lesser than the blades of grass around us. And we come in that humble way. And that's what the ceremony is designed to do, to remind us of that. And so, yeah, the people who are there, even when they're not there, there's still ways they can be included and held within that ceremony. And then afterwards, the prayer ties, you might want to put them to the fire. They go back to the one fire. Some people keep them and carry them with them to the next lodge. You know, this, Josephine may well come back next year if she's invited. We don't know what's going to happen in this 7 weeks for her on this altar. So I think that's, have I covered everything, Jo? Is there anything else that I might need to add? I'm not sure. I think I've said everything.
I feel like that we've covered enough information there that people will be able to feel into if it's something they want to join. They will have gotten to hear your hearts and voices and heard the description of the practice and the process, and something that we can share with anyone who's thinking about, or doesn't even know yet, but might be thinking about coming along. So thank you so much both for your time. Really, really looking forward to having you all here for those magical days.
Time is running. It's getting closer and closer.
I know it won't be long. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And we've got one more comment in. Yeah, and so Hazel said no question, but she's really looking forward to coming and taking the ceremony. So yeah. Well, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you.
Stop the recording.